All right. Welcome, everyone, to Responsible Bytes, the podcast where we talk about all things safe and responsible technology. I'm your host, Dr. Zena Assad, and today I am joined by the incredible voice actor, Rhiannon Moushall. Welcome to the podcast, Rhiannon.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. I'm going to add the context for our listeners just so that they are aware. Rhiannon and I are family. So my husband, Bren, obviously is your brother. So we are family. And one of the things that I absolutely love about you, since being with Bren, has been your incredible career as a voice actor. And you've been so busy lately because I follow you on socials. And I kind of want to know, how is it that you've been able to stay so busy given that AI is allegedly taking everybody's job?
Well, let me tell you, not if I take its job first. The number of AI roles I play is insane. That's a really good question. I think everyone, particularly in my industry, is pretty scared. There's a lot of fear-mongering. Some of it's valid, some of it's overblown. Gen AI is getting real good, real good.
Really good.
With 3 seconds of a dry sample of a voice, it can synthesize a terrifyingly accurate clone of a human voice. So why do I still get work? And I think fundamentally the answer is people still want to work with people. At the end of the day, as easy and accessible as Gen AI voices are, the human element is still a draw for a lot of employers. Now, there are different areas of what I do where it's less important. For example, so I'm a voice actor, but I work across video games, animation, IVR, which is like those telephone prompts that you love to hear when you're on hold.
You're that voice?
Yes, I'm that voice for a lot of businesses.
You're number 5 in line.
Yeah, so I apologize. You've probably sworn at my voice at some point. So there's those sorts of things, corporate explainers, commercials. Yeah. So areas that Gen AI is generally taking our jobs or is replacing voice actors tends to be the drier areas like IVR, corporate explainers. Mm-hmm. However, I will say that corporate sort of went quiet for a couple of years, and now everyone's saying we're getting a really big return of corporate clients going, so we did the AI thing and our employees hate it. So can we pay you now to go back and re-record?
Is it because it sounds like too robotic?
Yeah, people can still tell. And I'm not saying that they'll always be able to tell. Obviously, it's going to improve. But for now, people still generally know. And employees can tell when you're kind of selling them up the river. Why should they pay attention to the material you've made for them when you haven't even put any energy into creating it? So they feel cheap when you do that. As for things like games and animation, in games, there's a big sort of it's so exciting. Think of all the things we can do, but also primarily it's to cut costs. No one believes it's for the creative,
Oh, absolutely not. I think everybody knows that it's arguably cheaper. But I guess to go back to what you were saying before about, the corporate one, which is arguably more boring than the creative stuff you get to do with games and animation. Even if it's boring though, it's still a paid gig, right? And it would still be a tremendous amount of experience for somebody who's entering the field. So even from that argument, is it still frustrating for you as a voice actor to be on the phone and to hear this very robotic voice being like, your call is very important to us?
Yeah, it's an interesting beast. I'm less frustrated. I must say that I'm someone who's pretty grounded about the whole thing. I know it is going to replace aspects of my job, but I don't think I'm going to disappear. This job is not going to disappear. It definitely is taking entry-level jobs in actually other ways, but the corporate side of things, because some people only do corporate VO, that's what they do.
Oh, right.
I'm quite a blanket kind of gal, and I primarily work in games and animation and the character work and commercials. But for folk who really only work in e-learning and corporate, this has been a very disturbing time. But as I said, even they are saying, well, people are coming back because they're not getting the quality they want. I would say where it's really damaging the entry-level positions are actually in fan projects and the unpaid work. So when you start out as a voice actor, because anyone can do it, by the way, this is not you don't need a degree. Were you
impressed by my your call is very important to us? Do you feel like I could be a voice actor?
I think you should pick it up. I think tomorrow, we've got the mic. Is that a Shure SMB? Is that like
It
a
is.
proper.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah. Is it like
perfect.
a very professional setup?
It's a really nice mic. It's great for corporate and things because it'll give you a nice clean tone and it doesn't pick up a lot of mouth clicks and that kind of thing. See,
Yeah.
you're in. You're in.
You know, I tell Bren that I feel like I could be a voice actor, and I show him, like, I let him listen to all of my accents. He's not impressed at all. I feel like I do a fabulous job, but he's just not impressed at all. I feel like I do a really great Scottish accent, and he's just like, absolutely not.
Fabulous. Please pick it up today. Please pick up Scottish accent video today. There's not enough.
That's going to be like my niche. You know how you were saying before, like some people only do corporate? Mine's going to be like only Scottish accents.
I love that you're like, I'm Australian, I only do Scottish VO. People
that is my niche.
Yeah, that's going to go down really well in this age of authenticity and genuine casting. That'll go great for you.
I could lie and say I've got like Scottish heritage. No, I couldn't. I'm trying to like think like who on either side of my family could like pass as Scottish. Like my dad's name is Haydod and my mum's name is Safa. And I'm just like, I don't think it's going to work.
People emigrate all the time.
Yeah. But mine did not happen to emigrate to Scotland.
I feel my point is you could totally, anyone could.
Yeah.
But the issue is, once upon a time to do that, you basically logged on and there's all these pay-to-play sites. There are all these subscription sites that just have people putting up random projects, whether they're self-made or fan dubs or whatever, and you would cut your teeth on these free portfolio projects.
Mm.
But artists aren't doing that now because for them, especially when you're new, you think hiring a voice actor is going to be really expensive. So they opt to buy a voice pack or buy access to a voice model to just fill their world themselves with these generated voices. When what they don't realize is the voice actors would have worked for free on their projects just to get something to chuck on their portfolio. And that's, I think, a big issue.
So I guess from my perspective, I'm trying to understand what is the core to, aside from the fact that it's more of a robotic voice, which we know is going to improve over time. So we're going to get to a point where these AI-enabled voices sound almost identical to a human. What else are you missing when you opt for an AI voice versus a human voice? Like, what's the nuance that you're missing in that experience?
A fresh pair of eyes and a creative brain. When a project comes to cast their VO, it's usually, most of the time, towards the end of a project. And some projects like games may have been in production for years up until that point. When the voice actor gets a hold of it, you get a whole new perspective on the character or the narration that they're giving that AI just can't. AI, you can plug in the direction and you can be pretty precise and ask for very specific emotions, but it's not the same as someone going, I'm bringing my experience as a human being to this as well. And you've written this character that has had, let's say, this experience of the world. Maybe they're a soldier. I bring a completely different view, being someone who has never been a soldier. But I have experienced grief. I've experienced physical pain. I have experienced loss. I bring that. And that is something that AI to now can't. And I've worked with especially a lot of creative producers who have said, when they put out the casting call, they get the voices in and it changes everything that they thought they knew and wanted about that character. Because everyone who sends in an audition is sending in their interpretation. So when you remove the human aspect, you remove that additional creative layer. You remove nuance. You remove subtext. It's like, I hate it. Very rarely is it good when someone like writes and directs a film. Do you know what I mean? There are some who are amazing. But for the most part, people who only work in their own brain don't produce their best work.
Like, you need that additional person.
You need other people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You need somebody else to come in and go, I gotta check that. Another example, as an Australian, Christ. A lot of Americans and British people like to write Australian characters, and that's good. I'm excited. More Australians, please.
If I come across one more Crocodile Dundee Australian, my lord.
So imagine that you're an American writer and you've got a game and you've written this Aussie character based purely on what you know about Australians, which is Crocodile Dundee. Yeah, crikey. And you just plug in a voice. You don't get anyone in who perhaps is Australian or knows Australian culture to go, all right, mate, that's a bit much. Like,
We don't sound like that. Yeah.
don't even start me on the accent debate. That's a different podcast. That I could
You
go
know,
for
I was
hours.
in the US last year for work and everybody kept asking me if I was British. And I feel like I have a pretty distinctly Australian accent. I don't think I sound British at all. And it's like I've traveled a lot in my life and it is the only country I've ever been to where they were like, "Are you British?" And I was just like, "No,
No, it's not thick
No.
enough.
no,
You got to go, oh, sorry, mate, no.
no."
Or just go,
G'day.
Cleo, no. Because they love that.
I think that was my favorite show as a kid, to be honest.
Oh,
I don't think a lot of
H2O.
people know. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people know the reference. What was it? H2O, just add water.
Yeah.
They're mermaids, but only when water touches them. I remember I was a kid and I was like, I want to be a mermaid. I mean, I can't swim, but like, you know, in my
Oh my
child
God, you
mind.
can't swim.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm learning.
That's so good.
So my
That's
dad
really bad.
taught us all to swim as kids, and like, you know, my dad is my dad, and his version of teaching us to swim was to aggressively say, "Scoop the water, scoop the water." My brothers seemed to pick up scoop the water. I didn't. So I can't swim, but I am learning. So I go once a week and I have like a little paddleboard and I kick from one end to the other end. And my goal is to not have the paddleboard at some time, but I just got to figure out what to do with my arms with that paddleboard.
Yeah,
So I
that's
cannot
great.
drown. I
Okay,
cannot drown.
good. You can
Yeah.
float. You can.
I can float. I cannot drown. But if the water is even slightly choppy, I'll 100% die. I just...
Wow, no beach vacations then. Hey.
Yeah, Bren doesn't let me go into the ocean deeper than my knees.
Yeah, that's fair. I think
Because
that's
he knows
probably
I can't
safe.
save myself.
To be fair, Robin's exactly the same. He can't swim
Yeah.
either.
See, but you know what
He's
it is,
in-
though? I was just going to say that everybody thinks that all Australians live by the water. Like, I grew up in suburban Melbourne, a good 2-hour drive from a, you know, substantial beach. Did not grow up by the water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Even
I'm learning
still.
to swim.
I'm shocked, but I'm impressed that you're learning because Robin refuses.
Well, I'm learning because I have this dream of being a mermaid. No.
Oh my God.
no.
You've got to live up to it.
That's my
Oh,
dream in life, is to be able to swim like a mermaid, which I
Oh,
don't
I
think
want
is actually
that
going
for
to get me
you.
very far, but you know.
No, you need one of those like silicone tails that the ladies wear in the aquariums in China.
They're apparently really heavy.
Yeah. I imagine it must be terrifying. You have to be a really good swimmer, I think, to cope with that.
You do have to be a really good swimmer, and I've seen videos online where like they get stuck or something and they have to quickly shimmy themselves out of the tail to like get back up, and that's just I don't, you know, I feel like I have a lot of dreams and the reality of them for who I am as a person just wouldn't be real. So swimming is one of them. I want to learn to swim better, but realistically I'm never going to be a mermaid because I'd be shocking at being a mermaid. I think I'd panic. The other one is that I really, really want to be someone who camps and likes the outdoors.
Oh, don't we all?
I'm just...
Sorry. Knowing you, yeah. Okay. I could see the want, but I also can see all of the things holding you back.
Yeah,
But
like, you know, no running water or plumbing and it's dirty outside. And
yeah,
we have this little veggie patch and it's like slightly elevated and we've got zucchinis in there.
nice.
And one of the zucchini things, like one of the zucchini branches has grown over the elevated veggie patch. And there's a zucchini growing on it. And I said to Bren, like, oh, we have to get it up off the floor and put it back into like the patch. And Bren's like, it's all the floor. It is all outside. It's all the same.
It's all floor, Zena. It's
He's like,
okay.
it's all floor. You can still eat the zucchini.
Oh, you would hate our veggies. They grow in a veggie box that the cat craps in. So all
Is
of
that,
them have
like,
touched
good
cat crap.
fertilizer for it?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know that cat crap is. It's mostly fish and fur.
Oh.
It's not like, you know, other animals which probably defecate plants. Anyway, point is, maybe you wouldn't like our homemade veg, but
Yeah, I don't know. I think I just need to accept that there are certain parts of my life, like certain visions of my life, that are just never going to come to fruition because they're not really aligned with the person that I...
that's growing up, is realizing
It's maturing.
that, yeah, it is. It's going, actually, that's not who I am. That's a noble goal. It's not who I am.
Bren can go camping. I'll stay home.
Yeah. It's good
But
for you
anyway,
to
where were we?
be
We got
separate.
on this
Oh.
topic because we were talking clear. Oh no, clear Australia.
Ah,
accent.
Australian. Yes. So, for example, an AI isn't going to correct your verbiage. Even things like sometimes they get the slang wrong.
Mm.
Like, I was reading a script the other day where they wanted me to go, all right, lads. And I was like,
Do we say that?
no, we don't. I was like,
We
Brits
don't.
say that.
Yeah.
So I was like, I just said to them, I'm just going to change it to mates because this lad sounds weird. But for example, an AI is not going to do that. They're not going to go, that doesn't sound right.
No.
And someone might go, oh, well, I'll get AI to write the script. Once again, you're still going to get issues. You're still going to get those inconsistencies.
You will 100% get crikey in it if you ask AI to write
Yeah,
an Australian
exactly.
script. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
And something about dingoes eating babies.
do you know what? I've cracked that joke a couple times over here in the UK, and people always look at me like really horrified. I'm like, oh,
They don't know the joke.
No, I think maybe they just know the original news story, and then they're just like, that's terrible.
Well,
Why would you say that?
And then there's the Great Emu War.
Yeah, that's always fun to spit out.
Yeah. And, you know, my brother's girlfriend recently she's like applying to become an Australian citizen. She's Colombian. And we were trying to like embrace her into Australian cultures. So we took her to Bunnings to get a Bunnings sausage because I feel like it's a quintessential Australian thing. But she put mustard on the sausage.
Not gonna lie, I would have too. I like mustard.
What?
Yeah.
No, it's tomato sauce.
I'm a dual citizen now. I feel like mustard, like hot English mustard, is is it a British thing that must be done now?
Were you a mustard girl before you moved to the UK?
Yeah, I was. Who am I kidding? Bloody love mustard.
You really were never very quintessential Australian, were you?
Look, no. What do you mean? Come on, I was a theatre kid.
People hiring you need to take your feedback with a you know.
Don't. I have been told by so many like Brits and Americans like, you don't sound very Australian, and I'm like,
excuse me.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, do you want me to go like this? And they're like, yeah,
that's really what they think we sound like. And this is the thing with AI, right? Like, so this is one of my pet hates. But whenever I watch a TV show or watch a film, and the villain is always ethnic, because of course, you know.
Yeah.
And the accent is always either this like heavy, overly Russian accent, or this like incredibly Middle Eastern accent. And like I don't know who they think speaks like that, but I personally have never come across a Russian person speaking English who sounds like that, or a Middle Eastern person speaking English who sounds like that. And it's like, in the absence of AI, we're still getting a complete misrepresentation of cultures and voices and things like that. So I think that's an existing problem that is going to be exacerbated by AI. And like, it brings me comfort to know that voice actors like you are stepping in and being like, we don't actually sound that way. But given like current TV and like film and cinema, I feel like it's an existing problem, right?
It's a really big problem. And you're right about the AI thing. I've had many an argument on LinkedIn, the cool place to be, kids, by the way. But like
grown-up social media.
It is, where everyone, mind you, the men behave like friggin' children.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Every time I try to weigh into a Gen AI discussion, one of the first things I bring up is like, but this is I'll watch a very like generic and like kind of just like a little bit racist feeling piece of media where they're like, look at this very South Asian looking woman wrapped in a sari, but she has bright blue eyes and very European like nose shape and like walking through a desert with a jaguar. And they're like, this is what AI can do. And I'm like, all right, hold up, bud.
I have so many issues with this image.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, look, when it's trained,
where is this woman from?
Yeah. Where is this okay, when it's all trained on stereotypical media and these heightened characters, especially from communities that like don't have a lot of input into the media sphere, like most of it's American.
It is.
And it's American portrayals of people. You're going to get this weird thing. And they'll always be like, it's better than no representation. I've included a black woman. And I'm like,
do you remember when the Barbie movie was coming out? And I think it was BuzzFeed who used an AI image generating tool to generate an image of a Barbie from every nation. And then they published it. And it was like wildly racist. Like the Middle Eastern Barbie was a terrorist. And like the Sudanese Barbie had like a machine gun. It was insane. But you're right. Like and everyone at the time was like, you know, all up in arms over Twitter being like, AI is racist, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, it's not. This tool has like just plowed its way through the internet to generate these images. And the internet is racist because people are racist, right? Like, and this is a thing I always talk about, like, is it a problem or is it an AI problem? So like with what you're talking about, you know, like proper representation in voice acting, Like, it's awesome that you, and I'm sure many of your colleagues do it, but it's an existing problem.
Oh,
AI
yeah.
has exacerbated it, insanely exacerbated it. So I'm like really curious what the next decade is going to look for us as people like, use AI more. They're not having these voice actors who are able to step in. And so like we've already got this existing problem. Like, I just want to know what like the future villain of the next Marvel movie is going to look like, basically, because that'll be a good indication of like the impact that it's had.
Well, I mean, the way things are going politically, it's probably going to be the Americans. I wonder if they're going to be the villains in all the media now.
I don't know, because they're the ones making the movies. So like, you gotta.
The American left are making a lot of movies, and I don't think they like their counter-spectrum cousins at the moment. So it'll be interesting.
We're living in such a wild time. I was on Blue Sky the other day, and like they were talking about how like Google Maps is going to officially change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and I was like, what reality am I living in right now?
I have a lot of my clients are American. I work with America a lot. I'm on call with Americans at least once a week with like an accountability group, and it's like checking into the apocalypse of every Monday. Like I log on, I'm like, how are you guys doing? And they're just like, and I'm like, how are your weekly goals? Like I'm just like, how?
Bring positivity to their life.
Yeah, and they're just like,
your country is on the verge of collapse, but have you made progress on your 2025 resolution?
That's it. Yeah. I feel very deeply for them. And I mean, it's affecting all of us, obviously.
It is. Look, I've got a lot of American colleagues, some who live here in Australia and some who are still in the US. And every time I talk to them, of course, they're concerned, because even the ones who live here have family back in the US. And you know what's so fascinating to me? Of all of the American people in my life, none of them actually reflect the current government and political system in their country, which I find really, really interesting. I mean, I wouldn't say that the Australian political system reflects me as an Australian, but I feel like the American one is maybe more extreme.
Absolutely. It's kind of like how Brexit blindsided the UK here. Like, it proved like how London-centric and out of touch the opposite spectrums of the country were, because everyone just thought Brexit was an absolute joke and there was no way that it was going to get voted through. And then, so a lot of people didn't vote because, they don't have mandatory voting here, which they really should.
Yeah. We get fined, what, $20-$30 if we don't vote? Or maybe
I thought it was like 50. I thought it was 50.
Maybe it is 50. I don't know. This is proof that I do vote because I haven't been fined.
Yeah, there you go. Or you've evaded the system. Well done.
No, I don't think I'm that clever.
I think you are. You're very clever. You're a doctor.
Yeah, but not the kind that actually makes a difference to society. Although, do you want to hear a funny story about voting? So my name is Zena and my brother's name is Zane. And we both obviously have the same last name, Assad. And at the time when we both lived at my parents' house, a couple of times we would get fined where like he would get fined saying he voted twice and I'd get fined saying I didn't vote at all. And it was because when we were going to vote, our names were like right after each other and they were like getting us confused. And so from then on, we both had to be like, we'd go together and be like, we are separate human beings with separate names.
Yeah.
They're not spelled the same. They both start with Z, but they're not spelled the same. And now we don't have the same address, and we haven't for like over a decade. So it hasn't been a problem for a decade.
I love the idea that that's just like casual. Like, you guys are the same, right? You're both some sort of foreign with Z. Cool.
It's ethnic. It's the same. We literally started going to vote together so that we could physically demonstrate that we were two separate human beings.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god. We just paid the fines because it was too hard to argue against them. So we used to just pay the fine, even though we both voted.
The government relies on that. That's the income. I mean, that's
20 or 50 or... I feel like it was $20 back in the day. This is like a decade ago.
I feel like I got fined once, but it was when I was like 18. I think because I didn't realize I could have voted yet. I think I was on the cusp, and I think I missed the first vote. And I remember I was in hospital and I got the bill and I was like, how am I going to pay this? How am I going to... Because, I worked at Coles and I was making like so much now.
$20 is so much money. I remember this was like the times when I used to only fill up fuel in my car like $20 worth because I was poor, and I was just like, this is going to get me from A to slightly B.
And if I don't make it, well, I'm hitchhiking.
I'll walk the rest of the way.
Wild West shit, honestly.
So we're not in those positions anymore. I mean, now I can actually fill up my entire car full of fuel. I feel very privileged.
Very professional.
Yeah, but I want to bring us back to this. I'm
sorry,
I've completely
AI.
diverted us.
No, so bad.
I want to bring us back to this chat about AI. One of the things I want to touch on is, so like with the sweeping kind of AI tools that are coming in, there's a lot of artists coming forward trying to advocate for like the value of their work, right? Like, please value our work. You know, this is how much energy has gone into it, how much effort, how much creativity, how much innovation and ingenuity and all of these things. And, you know, a lot of them are talking about how AI has really kind of diminished people's understanding of the value of their work. But going back to one of the points I was talking about earlier, I actually feel like that's always existed, right? Like we can get, you know, knockoff prints of artists' work online, you know, like I can, you know, there's a lot of stuff online about like copying people's work without, you know, crediting their work. So like it's been around for ages, right? So do you feel like AI is just an addition to that problem, or do you feel like AI has like brought a unique set of issues to that problem?
For me as a voice actor, not speaking necessarily from like a physical media perspective, but from a voice actor perspective, the difference now is that I can be cloned against my will. It's not that someone can like just snip together pieces of my voice. It's that they can clone my voice and make me say shit I would never fucking say and do things vocally I would never do. And that is, everyone talks about it, and I think it needs to be talked about more, but the existence of like AI porn and sexual materials that use people's image, likeness, voice against their will is terrifying.
It is terrifying. There was a story recently about kids who did it to a teacher, which I thought was really horrific.
That's it. And this, so in the gaming sphere, famously, so Skyrim, really big game. Everybody loves Skyrim. It's been around for ages. I do
know that game, even though I don't game, but my brother's game is a Britain game, so yeah, I know Skyrim.
Fabulous. So Skyrim, really big game, still very popular many, many years later. And a lot of people make mods for it. Like they basically use the tools to build their own levels, if you will, and characters and quests. With the introduction of AI voices, they can now make them procedurally say anything, which people are really excited about. But guess what this gets used for a lot? You can imagine. Porn.
Yeah.
And the original voice actors have come forward and been like, this is so violating. I never gave permission for this. Like I've done adult games. I've done games where there are adult themes. I've done games where I say and do pretty horrific things. Because, you know, they're games. If you're playing a bad guy, you're going to do some terrible stuff. Yeah. But I get to consent in that moment. And even now, like I worked on a project last year, there was an intimacy coordinator present. There was someone there.
Acting, really?
Yeah. Well, there is a very, if it's a scene of a sexual nature now, they have someone in the room who basically, because it sounds really silly, but please just imagine for a second, you're standing in this like little box like I am now. There's a window. There's like a director, a writer, and a couple of people online, like on the cans listening, like the creators, and they're listening to you go.
That is so cringy and awkward. And you know what? It like takes the romance out of it, really.
Yeah.
Like when you see... You know how they tell you you should never know how the sausage is made because then you'll never eat them again? I feel like this is the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. So an intimacy coordinator is essentially there. She was fantastic. I loved her. She was literally like, I could see her in the background every now and again. She'd just go like this. She'd like hold up a thumb and be like, you okay?
You're doing great, honey.
She would just check because at any moment, like I could back out. If we were doing something I didn't want to do, she was like, we can leave. Like she basically just gave me permission to shut the whole session down.
And, you know, that's something people are talking about with consent is that like consent is throughout the process, not just in the beginning. And I guess that's something that really is taken away from you with these AI-enabled tools, right? Like if your voice is used for explicit and adult content that you didn't consent to in multiple different contexts, it is a huge issue. And is it being accredited to these actors, or is it just actors who are like hearing their voice and going, I know that's my voice?
It's a mix of both. So there are websites you can go to that have gone and built synthesized voices just off. So I found my voice on several websites, but as specific characters. So when people go, oh, I really want to make that character say this, they can go to a website and find a voice model built off my performance that they can just pluck. And it'll say like character played by Rhiannon Moushall, and they can just take it and use it however they want. And the only way, it's an opt-out system. You have to go and track down these websites and say, please take it down. But by then you don't know how many people have downloaded it. You don't know how far it's gone or that they're going to keep it down. You basically have to keep going back and checking. And then alternatively, people are just taking other people's voices and they're hearing it in the wild. I had someone who heard their voice on a commercial on YouTube. So
no.
Yeah. And they were like,
That's never mainstream.
Exactly. That people think this is just like internet gremlins using this.
No,
It isn't.
no.
It is big companies stealing people's voices and then, rather than asking permission, begging forgiveness. And they're getting away with it because we don't really have the legal protection, or we don't have the means to sue. We don't have the means to challenge these bigger companies. It's a scary time. We've got a vote coming up in Parliament, or not a vote, sorry. They're discussing a change in law to allow global tech companies to scrape basically our arts for AI development. And it would be an opt-out only policy.
The issue with that, though, is like they've already scraped everything. So it would only, like if it was to come into effect, it would only apply to anything that is then put out after that date. And so, I mean, it's not that I'm against it. I still think it's a measure that needs to be pursued for sure. But I think people need to understand that anything that's already out there has already been scraped.
Has been scraped.
And with most of these things, so like Facebook, Instagram, even WhatsApp, people don't realize WhatsApp is part of it. You know, Twitter, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, most of them have opt-out options for your data being used, but none of it is upfront. You have to really kind of scroll through to figure out how to do it. And it's very much buried. It's like, you know, when you want to unsubscribe from those mailing lists and then like the unsubscribe button is like tiny all the way on the bottom, and it's also buried among like a paragraph of text. And then you click
background color.
It is. And then like you click it and it takes you to another browser that's like, are you sure? And you're like, yes. And then it takes you to another one. It's like, give me a reason. And it's like, it literally takes you so long and so many steps to opt out. And they do it on purpose because it discourages people. And it is easier for someone to just be like, you know what? I'm just going to ignore this.
Yeah.
And like for me, as somebody who is not a creative and is not, or maybe I am, I don't know, but like I don't really feel like I'm creating content when I post on my socials. I mean, I've still gone through and done all of, like, I've opted out of everything.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be too offended personally if my data is used because I don't feel like something is being stolen from me. Now, on the flip side of that, like if I was an artist, if I was putting forward content like, I don't know, singing or doing something with voice acting or, you know, artwork or like, you know, something that's creatively mine, I think I'd feel pretty differently about it.
Yeah. I think for me, it's the shortcutting that pisses me off. I hate that we couldn't take the time to figure out, is there creative and fun and, you know, ethical ways to use this tech? Instead, we jump straight to how can we steal shit? How can we make the most money? How can we...
That stems from like existing problems, right? And this is the thing. So I'm all for safeguarding tech. It's my job. My job is to build regulations around these technologies. But the thing I always talk to people about is, don't look at technology as the big bad wolf. Like at the end of the day, technology is an inanimate object and there are human beings making decisions around that technology. And so it's like, you know, especially for creatives and stuff, like stealing work has been around for ages. Plagiarism has been around for a long time. What AI has done has made it more accessible and more easy to do those things. So really, when we're building like regulations and guardrails around the technology, what we're actually doing is building them around the people who make decisions when using those technologies. So it's important like to shift your kind of your view and perspective, right? So it's like, for example, in the voice acting domain, maybe it's a case of like, if an organization does use an AI generated tool for like a particular voice, like piece, or I don't know the language here, Rhi, but you know, if they were to use it, maybe they'd have to put like some kind of watermark on it or a specific disclaimer that says we used an AI generated tool, because that's not what they're doing at the moment. They're claiming, like, they're just not addressing it at all.
Correct. I completely agree. And I think it's actually a big part of what's the issue in the voice acting community specifically. People are very blindly scared and they're not taking the time to learn what. Also, people keep saying all AI is bad. And I'm like, nah, okay, stop. No, you make us sound stupid. Don't say that.
Yeah.
AI is very different. There's lots of different types of AI.
It's an umbrella term.
Exactly. And once again, what you're angry about is how people are using it. So I've actually spoken to a couple of companies who have tried to use Gen AI voice models for their games for very specific reasons. For example, there's the argument of accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of games aren't voiced. You know, games are a wonderful art form. There's so many ways you can play them, but some games aren't voiced, but they then want to add voices specifically just for people who are playing who are visually impaired, who can't read the text. And And then, a Gen AI voice is a nicer way to listen to the lines than like a really robotic text-to-speech assistant.
Yeah.
Or one company in particular that was talking about their game was built on a Gen AI character who you're interviewing who's murdered her husband. And it's just this character. You're interviewing her and you could type in whatever you want. And you need to figure out why she killed her husband, where, how. And then they wanted to add voice to it. But they wanted to do it in a way where everyone who worked on it was paid, was properly compensated. Do you know what I mean? And so even the writers, it wasn't just like ChatGPT is going to spit out some lines. It was like we hired script writers to build her vocabulary and her personality.
Incredible.
It is. They're called Meaning Machine.
Meaning Machine.
Yeah, and the game is called Dead Meat. And so I collaborated experimentally with them to give her a voice, to see like how long would it take to develop a voice that was good, that covered all the emotions and range we needed, and how expensive would it be? Is it viable? Is there something that was worth doing? And it was funny because we did the session and we're like, cool. And they're actually now, I think they're using it as like a case study for a couple things. But
so cool.
It was. But at the same time, we finished the recording session. We're like, oh, there were some really great takes in there. Kind of sad that they're not going to be in the game. And the director was like, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, that's another issue as a voice actor is it's like, it's not necessarily the most fun because like we do what we do because we like doing it, not because like we're, getting rich. Like it was voice acting. Because people are like, wouldn't you just love to like give your voice to something and sit back and let the money roll in when they use it? And I'm like, no, because I like the acting part.
Yeah. You like the actual, yeah.
I like doing it.
The actual working part. Wouldn't it be cool if you were on like one of those really amazing animated movies like Moana or Shrek? Or do they still make Shrek?
I wouldn't put it past them. I wanted to be a Disney princess when I was a kid. Disney and I have a very strange relationship now. Oh, see, but that's tricky because like it's not racially appropriate, but I really love Mulan when I was a kid.
Dude, so we were talking about this before, okay? If they can put like crikey ears in Australian, I feel like you could... Well, you could make Moana your own. Was it Moana or Mulan? Who did you say?
Mulan. Moana was a little past my time. To be fair, well, voice acting's actually seen a big upheaval in the last sort of 5 years about like better casting because like crap, it sucks in this industry if you're not white.
It does. Like all jokes aside, I really do believe in like casting racially appropriate people. Like representation does matter. Like I don't think I'm ever going to see a Middle Eastern princess, although was Princess Jasmine in Aladdin, was she Middle Eastern?
I mean, she's meant to be. It's meant to be the Middle East. What is it based on? Is it supposed to be based on Abu Dhabi?
I'm not sure, actually.
I watched something talk about this once because it was talking about like Mena and Swana representation in Disney. She's meant to be, but like
it is.
Her
outfit isn't a Middle Eastern, right? It looks more like something like it looks a little bit more like she kind of looks like she's wearing a sari at some points, and
yeah, it's
Middle Eastern women don't usually wear the low baggy pants and crop tops.
Well, no, but remember that that was the white exoticism of the Middle East. Remember, like Dance of the Seven Veils.
So inaccurate. Have you visited the Middle? Although one thing I will say, and this is a common misconception. So prior to the Islamic Revolution of like the late 80s and early 90s, the Middle East was a very different place. And so it wasn't the conservative place that it currently is. So if Aladdin is based on like pre-Islamic Revolution Middle East, sure. But I don't know when Aladdin was first released.
It was released in mid-90s. Must have been like 95, maybe younger.
Well, I want to say though, even pre-Islamic Revolution, the outfit is still leaning more towards Indian culture than it is to Middle Eastern. Let's just, call it what it is, because
absolutely
we didn't really have our midriffs out. It wasn't our fashion statement.
Jasmine is a really hypersexualized character. She's weird. She
really is. Her cleavage is.
And like the seduction of Jafar was like, as a kid, even I was like, I'm uncomfortable about this. This is friggin' weird.
Like all of the Disney princesses were sexualized.
Oh, you are
Pocahontas.
Right.
So Pocahontas is one of my favorites. But then watching it back as an adult, I'm like, oh, this is awful.
This is messed up.
This storyline is just like really confronting.
Especially when you think about the fact that she was 13 or something.
I know. And he like took her from her home and was like, you savage, let me clothe you. And it's just like, but I want to go back to...
Wow, how did we get onto the ethics of Disney? It's a different podcast.
Well, talk to me a little bit more about the ethics of, because you kind of mentioned before how, you've got a different relationship with Disney now.
Disney, I mean, they crossed me when they bought Star Wars. To be honest, I think that's when it started. When I was like, "What are you doing?"
So the beef has been ongoing since the Star Wars purchase. So
Yeah, since the Star Wars. Because before that, I think I was on track to be one of those Disney adults. Like, I really loved Disney growing up.
yeah,
Like, because I wanted to be in musical theater and I sang, and I wanted to sing like a Disney princess.
oh,
Now I'm a bit like, I see through you, Disney.
how dare you? How dare you buy Star Wars?
Precisely, you conglomerate monster. I hope I don't get a job with Disney. This whole conversation will come back to haunt me. I'll get cancelled.
Just let me know beforehand and I'll take the episode down. Unless AI has already come through and like scraped.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I'm not going to get it. AI's going to get it.
Yeah.
No, but in all seriousness, like those Disney animated, I feel like for anyone that grew up in that like golden era of animated Disney, like, because it really was a golden era, like from Little Mermaid onwards was insane.
It was. And they were the OG movies and just, they were so good.
They were beautiful because they were hiring animators. Once again, when you start automating things to churn it out faster, it kind of lost its heart. We all saw that. The more it relied on digital techniques, things got easier. We lost the hand-drawn sort of charm. People started to notice more and more the ethical issues, if you will. We weren't as blinded by the prettiness.
No, we weren't. You know, I'm interested in your take on the live-action versions.
I've never seen one.
No.
I refuse.
You're exactly like Brent. So I forced him to watch The Lion King with me because this was when we were first dating before we were married. And, you know, he was just like, I love you.
He's trying to impress you, yeah.
Like, watch Lion King with me.
I'm sure he loved it.
He did not. I thought it was brilliant. Like, did I think it was as good as the original? No. But I loved, I don't know, I think I loved the aesthetic of it. Although I will say though, like, as much as I appreciated the voice, because they use different voice actors, and as much as I appreciated the voice acting, when it's a real or what looks like a real lion, it's harder to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember like Homeward Bound when we were kids?
Yes, I do. The two dogs and the cat, and they have to find their way home.
Yes, that worked because it wasn't animated to their mouths. Like the idea that we were listening to their thoughts, because they were voiced over, but you really thought that was their voices.
Because it was more creative in that way. And I think that's what, I think this is the essence of what we're trying to say, right? The issue with increased digitization and increased use of AI tools is that you lose that creativity and that charm. And it's I feel like what we're also losing, though, is the why. I know I'm going to get beef for this. I really, really do. But I'm not a Swiftie.
That's fair.
No beef to her as a person. I don't know who she is. I'm sure she's lovely. Her music is just genuinely not my cup of tea. And I don't really think I'm her target demographic, honestly. I think because, I'm not 13. But I was reading this article that someone had written when she released her last album towards the end of last year. And they had to anonymize the article because the amount of backlash that they knew they'd get because of her fan base. And the article was basically saying that the quality of her album is so poor that at this stage she's releasing music for the sake of releasing it. And what they were saying was music is its own art form and its own version of storytelling. And that's it's one of the reasons why it resonates with so many people. And at this stage, she has taken the creativity and the art form out of music production and turned it into just this scaled multi-million-dollar business. And this person was saying she's taken the beauty out of music and she's just doing it because she can. And I feel like maybe it's the same with these animated movies and these animated films. They've taken that, what you said, that charm and that creativity and that art form away, and they've turned it into this machine. And I'm a bit the problem there is not AI, right? The problem there is that they want to make money and they want to produce these things and it's a business and blah, blah, blah. It's the bottom line. But what makes me sad is I feel like we're losing that that little spark. I just don't feel like it exists anymore. And I don't know, maybe this is such a millennial complaint where I'm just they don't make films like they used to. They don't make Disney like they used to. The princesses are different now.
It is. I'm going to be honest. We have to take into account it will always be a bit of that because we will always have nostalgia and we'll always think what we have is better. But I also agree with you that there is an argument from artists as well, like once you reach a certain level, you're selling out. Like once you achieve a certain level of success or work on a certain type of project that prioritizes income or cash over creativity, however that may present itself in games that can often come across as like in-game purchases, or if you work on something that's really big but the story wasn't good, and maybe it was crunched and rushed, people will say you've sold out or whatever. But I think, like you said, it's not the AI, it is the people that use these AI tools. AI tools are just another way to, or from a lot of people, are just a way to cut corners. And I personally feel like a lot of people will crow about advancing creativity, accessibility of creativity for all, when that's not really what they mean, because creativity and access to it was always there. It's always there. And in fact, just a little like tangent, I believe parameters, I believe your limitations create the best things. It's not how expansive the tools are, it's actually how limited they are. There was a game that came out last year called Tiny Glade. It is a beautiful procedural castle building game. And the tools it gives you are very limited. All you have to do is build castles. There's no way to win or anything. You're just building cute little castles. But the tools, a couple of reviews I read complained that it was like, oh, but they only let you do like these 15 things, right? And those in combination. And once you've done all those, you're like, oh, I wish it had more. And it's like, no. The point is that you only have a few things and you've got to work out how to build your vision with just those things. And I feel like we're losing that. I feel like
because we've become accustomed to choice,
to having everything.
Yeah.
I made a podcast. My friend makes the Penny Peep Show, which is...
I know, I listened to it.
Hey, well, it's serial comedies. He's amazing. And I wrote a couple of series when he needed some downtime just to fill in like the program. And I remember I was like, I need cover art. I guess I'm going to have to draw it because I couldn't afford to hire someone. The cover art was crap. But because I made it, the coloring was really good. I got help with the coloring. But like,
oh, so the coloring was
great. No, because that was done by someone who knew how.
But colored in the lines.
Oh, it was beautifully shaded and everything. But the art itself was crap to the point where someone even said, they're like, "Whoa, who did your cover art?" And I was like,
"It's avant-garde."
It was bad, but I just because I had to, like, not.
Yeah.
Someone would say, "Oh, you could have AI generated that," and I'm like, I don't want to.
I don't want to.
And I don't. Quite frankly, I know too many artists. And I personally can't bring myself to use an image generator because I know how much it hurts them. That they've spent years developing their skills and now against their will, because particularly early on, no one really knew what was happening. It was being scraped before they had time to do anything.
It was also, being scraped before people had a proper awareness of like, how does this work?
Precisely. So now their work is just stolen forever.
It is. It is stolen forever and it's being repurposed, and it's like music samples. You know, I watched, Brent introduced me to this amazing documentary series called Tales from the Tour Bus. It's absolutely fantastic, but each season focuses on like a different genre of music. And one of the recurring themes throughout this series is music samples taken from like, the early eras of like funk music and pop music and country music that are currently used today, and no credit is given to the original artists. They're not getting the royalties from those music samples.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, plagiarism has always happened. I mean...
It has always happened.
Look at people love Phantom of the Opera, and that famous like, da, 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 da. That's from Puccini. That's a Puccini opera. The most iconic...
I didn't know that.
The most iconic song.
You're so uncultured.
I only found out because a girl was studying it in year 12 for her like final project, and
I reckon they're betting on the fact that most people don't know. They're like,
that's it.
The uncultured masses will not know.
Precisely. That's what it is. And we count on people to forget. And of course there will be crossover in the fact that after a long enough period, people are going to produce the same thing. Like you put 1,000 monkeys on 1,000 typewriters and eventually they will converge. But for me, it's just the awareness. I feel like we've lost empathy.
Yeah.
And respect for humanity. Once again, it's not about the AI, it's the people. It's the need to make money as quickly as possible, to make money as cheaply as possible without thinking about the human cost. or the environmental cost. We haven't even touched on that, but that's a whole beast.
Oh, that is a whole beast. But maybe this is probably a good place for us to finish off with one last question. It's a question I'm asking all of my guests. What is your one piece of advice for how people can use or engage with technology responsibly? What is your one responsible bite?
My responsible bite is think about how and where your procedurally generated AI comes from. Do you need to use it? Could you hire an artist? Could you find somebody to inform the thing you want to create? I know it costs money. I know I'm asking people to go out of their way. It's harder. But if you really want to be responsible and respectful of creative people and their work, you should try. You should at the very least have an awareness of what you're using and who is affected by its use.
I think that's a really good place to end off on. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was so amazing to talk to you. And for any of our listeners who want to get in touch with you or to learn more about your work, I will leave links to all of your details in our show notes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zena. This was really fucking fun. Thanks.
This was amazing. I think my favorite part was, I know. So
clear.
I'll definitely make sure to keep that in.
Good. Please do.
All right. Thanks, Rhi.